You are being observed, not by surveillance systems mounted on every street corner, not by institutions of governmental power with their databases and files, but by every single person who crosses your path in the ordinary course of living. The moment you step outside your door each morning, you enter a silent arena where status is constantly being measured against invisible standards, where influence is carefully calculated by everyone present, and where potential targets are selected with predatory precision that operates beneath conscious awareness. The disturbing reality that most people never recognize, the truth that separates those who thrive from those who merely survive, is this. You have been marking yourself as prey without even knowing it. You have been broadcasting signals of vulnerability to everyone around you while believing you were demonstrating authenticity and building genuine human connection. Every day, in dozens of interactions, you reveal weaknesses that others file away for potential future use. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this dynamic centuries before modern psychology gave it clinical names and academic terminology. He sat in the courts of Renaissance Italy with the cold, observational eye of a surgeon examining a body on the operating table. He watched powerful families rise from obscurity to domination and then fall into ruin within a single generation. He documented the mechanics of human nature with surgical precision, recording patterns that repeated across different cities, different rulers, different circumstances, but always with the same fundamental dynamics at work. His observations remain as devastatingly relevant today as they were in 16th century Florence, because human nature itself has not changed 1 degree in 500 years. The technology surrounding us is entirely new. The social structures have transformed beyond recognition, but the creature operating within those structures, the human animal, with its drives and fears and calculations, remains exactly what it was when Machiavelli wrote his observations, for the benefit of those wise enough to learn from the mistakes of others, rather than insisting on making every mistake personally. You walk through life believing that openness is a virtue to be cultivated and displayed. You assume that transparency builds the trust necessary for genuine relationships, that emotional availability signals the authenticity that others are seeking, that sharing your inner world makes you more human, and therefore more lovable, more worthy of the connection you desire. These assumptions, absorbed from a culture that celebrates vulnerability and rewards public confession, have made you vulnerable in ways you cannot even perceive from your current vantage point. You have been trained by media, by self-help literature, by well-meaning friends and family, to spill your soul whenever the opportunity presents itself. But consider what Machiavelli observed among the princes and nobles of his era, where the consequences of miscalculation were not merely social discomfort, but exile, imprisonment, and death. Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you truly are. The surface presentation and the underlying reality need not match, and often they should not match, because the world is not arranged for your benefit and does not reward those who make themselves easy to read. When you expose everything about yourself, you retain nothing of strategic value. No mystery remains to intrigue those who might otherwise seek to understand you more deeply, to earn access to your inner world through demonstrated trustworthiness. No defense remains against those who would exploit your weaknesses once they become visible, and every weakness you display will eventually attract someone willing to exploit it. No leverage remains for the negotiations that life inevitably requires, whether in business, in relationships, or in the thousand small transactions of daily existence where having something others do not know gives you room to maneuver. You have emptied your strategic reserves for the temporary comfort of feeling known, of feeling that someone out there understands you, without considering whether that understanding will be used for your benefit or your harm. Most people do not damage their reputation through malice or deliberate self-sabotage. They damage it through carelessness, through a kind of emotional incontinence that they mistake for honesty and authenticity. They leak information about their circumstances, their emotions about those circumstances, their plans for changing those circumstances, and their weaknesses that make those plans difficult. Every disclosure is a withdrawal from a limited account of personal power. Every confession places a tool in the hands of those who may not have your best interests at heart, and most people you encounter do not have your best interests at heart, because they are primarily occupied with their own interests. Every announcement of intention is an invitation for interference from both declared enemies and supposed friends. Today, you begin learning to stop this hemorrhage of personal power. You will understand why controlled silence carries more weight than constant noise, why strategic ambiguity protects better than radical transparency, and how to navigate a world of competing interests while remaining untouchable, unreadable, and fundamentally in control of your own narrative. Before anything else in this examination of strategic behavior, you must confront an uncomfortable truth that your ego will resist hearing because it challenges the foundation of how you have been operating. The hunger to be seen, validated, and acknowledged by others is precisely what makes you invisible in the ways that actually matter. The one who begs for attention through constant performance, through sharing and displaying and seeking approval, receives only pity from those who recognize the desperation, or contempt from those who see the weakness it reveals. The one who commands attention through restraint and mystery, who withholds rather than offers, who creates scarcity around their presence and their words, receives genuine respect and eventually something approaching awe. The ancient philosophers from multiple traditions and the strategic minds of the Renaissance all agreed on this fundamental principle. The mind must be a fortress, protected from external assault by walls of discipline and gates of selective disclosure. Yet a fortress with its gates standing wide open is nothing more than ruins awaiting collapse, an invitation to every opportunist and predator in the surrounding territory to walk in and take whatever they desire. There are 9 specific behaviors that strip away your authority in every interaction you have. Some of these behaviors you practice daily without the slightest awareness that you're undermining your own position with each repetition. Some you mistakenly believe are strengths and virtues, qualities you cultivate with pride while they actively destroy the respect others might otherwise give you. They are signals of submission that others read instinctively, processing them below the level of conscious awareness, even if they could not articulate precisely what they are perceiving when they interact with you. Mastering this knowledge does not require becoming manipulative, cold, or sociopathic. It does not require abandoning warmth, connection, or genuine care for others. It requires becoming sovereign over yourself, which is the prerequisite for any other form of sovereignty you might desire. There is a profound difference between the king and the court jester, between the one who sets the terms of engagement and the one who performs for approval on terms set by others. One commands attention by withholding it strategically, by making their presence and their words scarce and therefore valuable. The other begs for attention by performing constantly, desperately, exhaustingly, eroding their value through endless availability. Consider the warning carefully before proceeding further with this material. Once you abandon these 9 behaviors, the world will treat you differently. The change will be noticeable and sometimes uncomfortable. Those who pitied you will begin to wonder what has changed, why you no longer seem to need their sympathy. Those who used you will find their leverage evaporating, their ability to manipulate you through familiar channels suddenly ineffective. Some will even feel a subtle fear they cannot name, an instinctive recognition that you are no longer operating by the same rules they understood and could predict. If you are not prepared for the isolation that accompanies genuine authority, stop here. Transformation is not free, and the price includes the comfortable dysfunction you have grown accustomed to. The familiar patterns, even when they harm you, provide a kind of security because they are known. If you are ready to reclaim what has always been yours by right, continue reading. The path to personal sovereignty begins with the first and most common error that ambitious people make: announcing their intentions before executing them. There is a peculiar addiction that grips the modern mind, and its drug is not chemical, but purely psychological. It is the instant gratification of speaking dreams aloud before living them into reality, of receiving praise for plans rather than accomplishments, of feeling the warmth of social approval without enduring the cold discipline of actual execution. When you announce publicly that you will start a business, transform your body through rigorous training, leave a destructive relationship that has been draining your life force, or pursue any other significant change in your circumstances, you receive a small but measurable rush of satisfaction from the announcement itself. This is not imagination or metaphor. Neurologically, your brain cannot fully distinguish between the pleasure of describing an achievement in detail and the pleasure of actual achievement. The neural pathways activated are similar enough that the announcement partially satisfies the drive that would otherwise fuel the work. You have tricked yourself into feeling accomplished while remaining completely stationary, your circumstances unchanged, but your motivation partially depleted. Machiavelli observed this pattern in princes who announced their military campaigns before marching, who declared their bold intentions in public forums where their enemies sat listening to every word. Those enemies had time to prepare defenses against the announced attack. They had time to form strategic alliances with other powers who felt threatened. They had time to undermine the plan from within through sabotage, espionage, and the corruption of trusted advisors. The tactical principle remains unchanged across 5 centuries of technological transformation. When you reveal your intentions prematurely, you provide a detailed map for those who wish to stop you. You dissipate the energy required for execution by spending it prematurely on explanation and justification. You invite interference not only from enemies who fear your potential success, but from friends who may secretly envy that potential more than they wish you well. The psychology of envy operates even in people who genuinely care about you, creating resistance to your advancement that they themselves do not recognize or acknowledge. Consider the terrifying power of the person who disappears from social view for 6 months and returns utterly transformed. No announcements preceded their metamorphosis. No progress updates documented their journey for public consumption. No requests for encouragement revealed their moments of struggle and doubt. Simply results, undeniable and impossible to dismiss, appearing fully formed where nothing seemed to exist before. When you broadcast your moves, you are unconsciously seeking permission from the group to which you belong, asking the tribe to nod approval before you act, to sanction your deviation from the established order they have grown comfortable with. Stop seeking that permission. You do not need it, and asking for it reveals that you believe you do. The lion does not roar before it begins stalking prey. It moves in perfect silence until the kill is certain, and only then does it announce its dominance to the surrounding territory. Speculation about what you might be doing will always paint a more impressive picture than premature revelation could accomplish. The mystery of your potential is your greatest strategic asset. Do not squander it for a cheap round of applause at a dinner party that will be forgotten by the time the dishes are cleared. The second behavior that systematically drains your authority is one of the most common and destructive forms of human weakness: the compulsion to complain about your circumstances to anyone who will listen. When you voice your grievances publicly, declaring your exhaustion to colleagues and acquaintances, criticizing your circumstances as though they happened to you without any participation on your part, lamenting the unfairness of systems and structures you have not seriously attempted to change or navigate, you accomplish 2 things that undermine your position completely. First, you admit loss of control in the most public possible way. You signal through every word that you are a passive recipient of circumstances rather than an active force shaping your own life. Observers register this unconsciously, processing it below conscious awareness. Even if they say sympathetic words in response to your complaints, they categorize you automatically as someone whom things happen to, not someone who makes things happen. This categorization, once formed, is extremely difficult to change through subsequent behavior. Second, and equally damaging, you transfer your negative emotional energy onto others without providing them anything of value in return for bearing that burden. You become a drain on their emotional resources, an obligation they must manage rather than a relationship they actively seek. They may nod with apparent sympathy while you describe your difficulties. They may offer hollow words of consolation that cost them nothing and help you even less. But beneath their polite response, something fundamental shifts in how they perceive you. They mark you as low status, someone to be managed rather than respected, perhaps even someone to avoid when possible. People are naturally drawn towards strength, vitality, and apparent success because association with those qualities benefits them. They are instinctively repelled by visible suffering and chronic complaint, not from cruelty or callousness, but from a deep instinctive understanding that misery often spreads to those who engage with it too closely. This is not moral judgment, but survival calculation, and everyone makes it constantly. This instruction against complaint does not mean you should suppress your difficulties until you shatter from internal pressure. That path leads only to explosive breakdowns that damage you far more than measured disclosure ever could. It means you must choose your confidants with extreme care, treating your moments of vulnerability as precious. Resources to be shared only with those who have demonstrated complete trustworthiness over extended periods. Speak to a professional therapist who is bound by legal confidentiality and paid specifically to help you process difficulty without judgment or agenda. Speak to a mentor who has earned your trust through years of demonstrated loyalty, whose wisdom has proven valuable in past crises, who has shown through consistent action that your well-being matters to them independently of what you can provide in return. Do not speak to colleagues who may use your vulnerability as leverage in professional competitions you do not even know you are participating in. Do not confide in the general public, whether in person or through social platforms, where your admissions will be preserved indefinitely and remembered far longer than any context that might have made them understandable or forgivable. To the world, you must project coherence and capability, even when your internal experience is chaos and confusion. This is not deception in any meaningful sense. It is protection, both of yourself and of those who might be weakened by witnessing your struggle without being able to help you. The Italians of Machiavelli's era had a word for this quality that they cultivated with great care: sprezzatura. It means studied carelessness, the art of making enormous effort appear effortless, of concealing the struggle behind the achievement so that only the achievement remains visible to observers. When someone asks how you are managing difficult circumstances, smile with genuine warmth, because warmth costs nothing, and say simply that you are moving forward. That phrase contains everything they need to know about your situation, and nothing they could ever use against you in future interactions. Suffer with dignity when suffering is unavoidable, as it sometimes will be. There is deep and lasting respect reserved for those who carry heavy burdens without announcing the weight to everyone they encounter. Those people appear capable of carrying even more, and others naturally want to follow them into whatever challenges the future might hold. The third behavior that destroys authority concerns emotional regulation, specifically the catastrophic error of losing your temper in public spaces where your reaction will be witnessed, remembered, and used to form lasting judgments about your character. Anger is a natural human emotion with legitimate functions in our psychological architecture. It signals boundary violations and motivates protective action. Aggression can be a strategic tool when deployed deliberately and with precise calibration towards specific objectives. But when you lose control of your nervous system, when you scream at service workers over minor inconveniences, snap at romantic partners in front of witnesses, or rage at strangers who cut you off in traffic, you demonstrate something deeply alarming to every observer present. You show them that your internal state can be hijacked by external circumstances you do not control. If a minor frustration, an irritation that will be forgotten within an hour, can transform you into someone unrecognizable, you are not in command of yourself. You are a reactive system waiting to be manipulated by anyone clever enough to locate your triggers and press them at opportune moments. Machiavelli advised that an effective leader should inspire respect and perhaps even healthy fear in those around them, but never contempt. Nothing generates contempt faster than watching someone lose emotional control over trivial provocations. The person who cannot govern their own reactions, who explodes at small frustrations and minor insults, cannot be trusted to govern anything else, whether that is a household, a project, a team, or a life of any significant complexity. When you explode, you also reveal your vulnerabilities in excruciating detail. You show the world exactly which buttons produce the most dramatic and predictable responses. The fourth behavior that signals submission to every observer is excessive apology, the reflexive tendency to apologize for actions that require no forgiveness, and states of being that constitute no offense against anyone. Modern culture has transformed apology into a verbal tick completely divorced from actual wrongdoing or genuine remorse. People apologize for existing in spaces they have every right to occupy, for asking questions they have every right to ask, for holding opinions that differ from emerging consensus, or taking up physical space that their bodies necessarily require. Every unnecessary apology is a small act of subordination. a micro-submission that accumulates over thousands of interactions into a permanent posture of chronic deference that others perceive and respond to accordingly. An apology is properly understood as an admission of error, an acknowledgement that you have transgressed against another person in a meaningful way or violated your own stated standards of conduct. It is appropriate and even admirable when you have genuinely wronged someone through action or negligence, when you have broken a promise or caused harm that was within your power to avoid. Reserved for such occasions, an apology carries genuine moral weight and demonstrates the integrity that comes from holding yourself accountable to standards. But when you apologize reflexively for everything, you apologize for nothing with any force whatsoever. The currency of your apology becomes worthless through inflation, like any currency debased through overproduction. No one values what is given freely and constantly without discrimination. The fifth behavior involves one of the most sensitive and dangerous subjects in human interaction: money and the perception of financial status. Your financial situation, whether desperate or abundant, whether rising or falling, should remain strategically opaque to casual observers who have not earned the right to know the details of your resources. If you display poverty or financial struggle through your appearance, your complaints, or your obvious inability to participate in activities that require resources, the world responds with either uncomfortable pity that distances people from you, or active avoidance that removes opportunities from your path. There is a widespread unconscious assumption that financial difficulty reflects some deeper personal inadequacy, some failure of character or capability that led to the unfavorable outcome. This assumption is often incorrect, but its incorrectness does not prevent it from operating in every interaction you have. The sixth behavior that undermines your position is participation in gossip, the exchange of information about absent third parties for purposes of social bonding and entertainment value. There is an ancient observation about the quality of minds that remains accurate across all cultures and centuries. Great minds discuss ideas and systems that shape reality. Average minds discuss events and circumstances that affect their lives. Small minds discuss other people as their primary form of engagement with the world. Gossip is the currency of those who have nothing more valuable to trade, nothing more interesting to offer in exchange for connection than commentary on the lives and choices of people who are not present to defend themselves or provide context for their actions. The seventh behavior involves the nearly irresistible temptation to explain your philosophy to others once you have discovered an approach that seems to work for you. When you adopt a new framework for living, whether it involves physical discipline, dietary restriction, spiritual practice, political affiliation, or intellectual system, like the very ideas being discussed here, the urge to share your discovery becomes almost overwhelming. You want to explain the principles to everyone at the table, believing they will benefit as you have. You want to convert them to your perspective, partly from genuine enthusiasm about what you have found, and partly from the validation that conversion would provide for your choices. Resist this temptation completely. First, unsolicited instruction annoys virtually everyone who receives it, regardless of how valuable the content might be. Second, every principle you announce publicly becomes a standard by which you will be evaluated continuously by everyone who heard you announce it. The eighth behavior is perhaps the most fundamental of all, the deep structure from which all other weaknesses emerge. The constant search for external approval that drives most human social behavior from childhood forward and continues operating throughout adult life in those who have not consciously interrupted the pattern. This is the root from which all other weaknesses grow, the underlying dependency that makes the other 8 behaviors feel necessary or inevitable. From earliest childhood, you were systematically trained by every institution and authority figure to perform for praise and avoid punishment. Parents, teachers, coaches, religious authorities, and peer groups all participated in conditioning you to seek external validation of your worth and to modify your behavior based on the approval or disapproval you received. The good child receives approval and reward, learning that compliance produces the feelings of safety and acceptance they crave. This pattern runs so deep through years of reinforcement that most adults cannot imagine operating outside its constraints. They check constantly to see if others are laughing at their jokes, nodding agreement at their ideas, approving of their choices through word or expression or body language. Every time you seek validation from another person, you transfer power to whoever you are seeking it from. You announce through your behavior that your self-worth is contingent on their judgment rather than your own assessment. You declare that their opinion of you matters more than your opinion of yourself, that you have placed your internal state in their hands and are asking them to be gentle with something you apparently cannot protect on your own. This creates a dynamic of dominance and submission that operates beneath conscious awareness, but shapes every interaction nonetheless. The person seeking approval automatically occupies the lower position in any exchange. The person whose approval is being sought occupies the higher position with all its attendant advantages and the ability to grant or withhold what the other person is seeking. There is a remarkable phenomenon that occurs when you stop trying to impress people and simply exist according to your own standards without reference to their reactions. They begin trying to impress you. The dynamic reverses itself without any additional effort on your part beyond the initial shift. Your indifference to their approval makes your approval suddenly valuable, even desirable, because what is scarce commands premium prices in every marketplace, including the social one. You become the judge rather than the judged, the standard against which others measure themselves rather than a competitor struggling for recognition alongside everyone else. The ninth and final behavior is the public display of vulnerability, which contemporary culture celebrates and actively encourages as a form of authentic connection that separates genuine humans from the false presentations they imagine everyone else maintains. You are told by countless voices to share your traumas openly, broadcast your struggles on public platforms for the support and validation of strangers, display your wounds as badges of authenticity that prove your humanity. This advice, however well-intentioned by those who offer it, is catastrophically misguided for anyone operating in competitive environments where others are constantly seeking advantage. When you cease these 9 behaviors, something strange begins to happen that you will notice within weeks if you maintain consistency. A vacuum forms around you that others struggle to understand or explain. You speak less frequently than before, choosing your words with greater care and delivering them with greater impact. You complain not at all, bearing your difficulties in silence or sharing them only with the carefully selected few who have earned that trust. At first, people will probe this change with concern and curiosity. They will ask if everything is all right, why you seem so quiet, what has happened to transform your presentation. Some will try various provocations to retrieve the reactive, insecure, predictable version of you they understood and could manage according to familiar patterns. They preferred that version because it was readable and therefore controllable. Hold your new position against every pressure to return to old patterns. In that silence, in that absence of approval-seeking and emotional leakage, you are building gravity that draws others into your orbit, rather than chasing frantically after theirs. By removing these 9 behaviors, you remove the handles that others unconsciously use to manipulate and position you. You become smooth, without obvious grip points. Impossible to steer through your reactions because your reactions no longer reveal your interior states. Once you perceive the game with clarity, you can no longer be played by it. The fortress is useless if the ruler inside lacks the discipline to maintain its walls through every assault.